Get your hands off her daughter. You're not qualified to do this, shouted Victoria Pemberton, CEO of the country's largest technology company, violently pushing the new nanny away from her 8-year-old daughter. Little Emma was in the midst of yet another anxiety attack, hyperventilating on the marble floor of the $15 million mansion. 3 renowned therapists, 2 child psychiatrists, and a private medical team had already failed to help her over the past 2 years. Mrs. Pemberton, said Joanna, the 34-year-old nanny who had been hired just 3 days earlier calmly, her daughter needs someone who understands what she's going through, not more people yelling at her. Victoria snorted in indignation. You're just a nanny. Don't give me your cheap magazine psychology theories. Emma needs real professionals. Joanna stood motionless, watching the child thrash on the floor while her billionaire mother continued to scream. His eyes revealed a strange serenity, as if he had seen this scene before and knew exactly how it would end. Excuse me, she murmured, stepping around Victoria and kneeling beside Emma. Without saying a word, she began to do something none of the expensive experts had tried. She simply breathed with the girl, mirroring his frantic rhythm and gradually slowing down. What the hell do you think you're doing, His Majesty? Victoria hissed, but her voice lost its force when she noticed that Emma's sobs were beginning to subside. Within 5 minutes, something that normally took hours to control with medication was resolving itself naturally. Emma opened her eyes, and for the first time in weeks, there was no terror in her gaze. How? Victoria swallowed her pride, confused. Joanna helped Emma sit up, keeping her voice low and calm. Sometimes the simplest answers are the ones that scare those who are used to complicating everything. Victoria studied the nanny's face for a long moment, trying to understand how a woman without expensive college degrees had achieved in minutes what elite medical teams couldn't achieve in years. There was something about Joanna's demeanor that suggested experiences far deeper than any resume could reveal. Mommy, Emma whispered, still holding Joanna's hand. She made the bad feeling go away. For a moment, Victoria Pemberton, a woman who controlled billions and commanded thousands of employees, felt completely lost in the simplicity of that moment. If this story of transformation and revolutionary methods touched his heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to find out how an unqualified nanny was about to teach one of the most powerful women in the world that not all knowledge comes with a diploma on the wall. In the days that followed, Victoria watched Joanna with the suspicion of an executive accustomed to controlling every variable in her life. The nanny had achieved something that dozens of expensive professionals had failed to do. Emma slept through the night, ate without distractions, and even more impressive, was attending school without panic attacks. This is temporary, Victoria muttered on the phone to her personal assistant. Probably she's sedating my daughter with some dubious herb. I want you to investigate the past of this woman thoroughly. What Victoria discovered in the reports made her even more angry. Joanna Williams did not have a college degree, had worked in modest family homes, and worse still, had grown up in public orphanages. How can this person understand the needs of a child like Emma? He muttered, throwing the papers onto the mahogany desk. Meanwhile, in the 15-square-meter children's room decorated by European designers, Emma laughed for the first time in months. Joanna had created a calm warrior game, where breathing deeply was like donning magical armor against scary thoughts. My mom doesn't like you, Emma commented innocently, arranging her books the way Joanna had taught her, a simple control technique that gave her a sense of power over her environment. I know, Joanna replied calmly, continuing to fold his clothes. Her mother is used to solving problems by buying expensive solutions. She doesn't understand that some things can't be bought. Victoria chose that exact moment to enter the room, her expression icy. Joanna, I need to talk to you. Now. In the main office, overlooking the $2 million garden, Victoria crossed her arms. You're filling my daughter's head with your simplistic philosophies. Emma needs serious medical treatment, not childish games invented by someone with no qualifications. Joanna remained standing, her hands relaxed at his sides. Mrs. Pemberton, may I ask when was the last time you spent an entire hour just talking with Emma? No cell phones, no meetings, just the two of you. Victoria's face hardened. Don't give me that cheap self-help psychology. I work 16 hours a day to give Emma everything she needs. Everything except her presence, Joanna murmured, so low that Victoria almost didn't hear her. What did you say? The executive's voice rose an octave. I said Emma doesn't need more expensive therapists. She needs to feel safe, and children feel safe when they realize that the adults around her know what they're doing. Victoria laughed scornfully. And he knows what he's doing? A woman who grew up in an orphanage is going to teach her how to take care of her own daughter. It was at that moment that something changed in Joanna's eyes. For a split second, Victoria saw a depth that made her involuntarily recoil. It wasn't anger or hurt. It was something much more disturbing, a complete understanding of the situation and absolute calm in the face of the storm. Growing up in an orphanage taught me a few things that expensive universities don't teach, Joanna said, her voice remaining calm. It taught her that anxious children usually have very real reasons to be anxious. And it taught her to recognize when a problem isn't with the child, but with the environment around her. Victoria felt something uncomfortable forming in his stomach. Are you implying that I'm the problem? I'm saying that Emma is anxious because she feels she has to be perfect to deserve attention. And I'm saying that 3 years of therapy didn't fix that because no one was looking at the real cause. The silence that followed was deafening. Victoria Pemberton, accustomed to intimidating CEOs of rival corporations, found herself completely speechless in front of a nanny who spoke with the authority of someone who truly understood her daughter. "You're fired," she finally said, her voice trembling with her barely contained anger. Joanna nodded calmly. Emma knows this was coming. She'll regress in the next 48 hours, and within a week you'll be looking for your 5th therapist. But when that happens, I hope you remember this conversation. As Joanna walked toward the door, Victoria shouted, "Don't you dare lecture him on how to be a mother." Joanna stopped, turned slowly. "I'm not lecturing you. I'm just making an observation. Emma has the most powerful mother in the country, but she feels like the most invisible child in the world." Each new attempt by Victoria to humiliate Joanna only revealed a silent strength being fueled by the very injustice he was trying to impose. What that privileged woman, a woman, didn't know was that every act of contempt was writing her own sentence, not of defeat, but of a lesson that would change her life forever. 48 hours after Joanna's dismissal, just as she had predicted, Emma had her worst anxiety attack in months. Victoria found her daughter hiding under her bed, hyperventilating and repeating, "Where's Joanna? Where's my magic armor?" "Emma, stop this nonsense," Victoria shouted, trying to drag the child out. Joanna was just an employee. "I've already hired Dr. Peterson, one of the best child psychologists in the country." But Emma refused to leave, screaming that she just wanted Joanna back. The crisis lasted 4 hours, ending only when Victoria, desperate, called the doctor and authorized stronger sedatives. Meanwhile, across town, Joanna was sitting in the modest living room of his apartment, typing methodically on his laptop. During her 3 days at the Pemberton mansion, she had done much more than just take care of Emma. She had observed, documented, and most importantly, listened. "Are you sure about this?" asked Marcus, his younger brother, an investigative journalism student, looking over her shoulder at the screen. "Because if we're right about this information..." "I'm sure," Joanna replied calmly, showing him a series of screenshots and notes. Victoria Pemberton built her tech empire by stealing patents from smaller developers and using his financial power to silence them in court. And Emma isn't anxious by nature. She's reacting to the toxic environment her own mother has created. Marcus nodded, impressed by the meticulous organization of the evidence that her sister had gathered. "How did you get all this in just 3 days?" Joanna smiled for the first time since she'd been fired. Rich, arrogant people make the same mistake every time. They think employees are invisible. Victoria made 3 incriminating phone calls in my presence, left sensitive documents lying around the office, and treated her own daughter like a failing business project. Over the next week, Victoria hired and fired 2 different therapists. Emma refused to cooperate with either of them, constantly asking for Joanna and the Calm Warrior games. The anxiety attacks intensified, the medication lost its effect, and the girl began missing school again. "This is unacceptable," Victoria exploded during an emergency meeting with the medical team. "My daughter cannot depend on an unqualified nanny. There are scientific protocols for this." Dr. Matthews, the most expensive child psychiatrist in the city, adjusted his glasses nervously. "Mrs. Pemberton, sometimes children form specific bonds that are difficult to replicate. Perhaps we should consider..." "Don't you dare suggest that I bring her back," Victoria cut his speech, slamming her hand on the marble table. "I've controlled billions in negotiations. I'm not going to be defeated by an 8-year-old and an orphanage nanny. What Victoria didn't know was that Joanna had spent the entire week researching and documenting not only the CEO's questionable business past, but also his destructive pattern as a father. Conversations with former company employees, analysis of filed court cases, and even detailed observations of Emma's behavior revealed a devastating picture. Look at this, Marcus showed Joanna the computer screen. I was able to confirm 3 of the plagiarism cases you documented. And there's more. She uses her own daughter as an alibi for unethical actions, claiming she's building a better future for Emma every time she crushes the competition. Joanna studied the documents with a serious expression. Emma isn't suffering from generalized anxiety disorder. She's developing symptoms of post-traumatic stress from living with a narcissist who treats love like a performance and approval like a currency. The turning point came when Victoria, in his growing desperation, decided to publicly expose her victory over the incompetent nanny in an interview with a famous business magazine. Some people think that money and education don't matter, she told the reporter, but I've proven that professional methods always trump amateur intuition when it comes to a child's well-being. The interview was published under the headline, Billionaire CEO explains how corporate discipline solves even family problems. Victoria shared the article on all her social media accounts, adding, "Lesson learned. Never let sentimentality compromise important decisions. #effective leadership #businessmom." Joanna read the entire article, then slowly closed his laptop. Now she's given me exactly what I needed. What are we going to do? Asked Marcus, watching the growing determination in his sister's eyes. We're going to show Victoria Pemberton that underestimating people is the most expensive mistake anyone can make, replied Joanna, already picking up the phone. And we're going to do it using her own arrogance as a weapon. As she dialed the number she had memorized, Joanna smiled as she thought of Emma. Soon, the girl would have backed not only his magical armor against anxiety, but also a mother who would finally understand that being powerful does not mean having the right to hurt those who are more vulnerable. It was when everyone laughed at his dismissal that something unexpected began to take shape, not only in the modest apartment where Joanna meticulously planned her response, but mainly in the determined look that now shone with an intensity that would make Victoria Pemberton realize that he had awakened a force he could not control, even with all his money. The call came on Monday morning as Victoria was reviewing quarterly reports in his office with a panoramic view of the city. Madam Pemberton, this is Jennifer Walsh from Business Weekly magazine. We have received some very interesting information about her business practices and would like a statement. Victoria frowned, annoyed by the interruption. What kind of information? We have documented evidence that her company has used facial recognition algorithms specifically programmed to discriminate against black candidates in hiring processes. We have also received recordings of meetings where she authorizes the spying on employees and, the reporter's voice faltered, the use of her own daughter's confidential medical data for unauthorized advertising campaigns. Victoria's blood ran cold. That's completely absurd. Who is making these ridiculous accusations? The evidence came from a source who has worked closely with his family recently. Joanna Williams provided extensive documentation, including audio recordings of conversations that took place at her residence. Victoria felt her legs go weak. During the 3 days that Joanna had been in her home, she had conducted multiple compromising phone calls, left confidential documents lying around, and worse still, discussed questionable business strategies without any caution. After all, who would pay attention to a mere nanny? She was recording? Victoria stammered, remembering specific conversations about manipulating diversity data to appear more inclusive, using Emma's medical condition as justification for unethical policies, and instructions to sabotage smaller competitors. We have 3 hours and 47 minutes of audio material, Mrs. Pemberton, including a particularly interesting conversation where you instruct her legal team to find a way to sue that pretentious nanny for defamation, even though you knew she had helped her daughter. Business Weekly publishes in an hour, he reported, checking his laptop. The Washington Post wants an exclusive interview with you tomorrow. And there's more. 5 former Pemberton Tech employees have already come forward publicly in support of your allegations. Joanna nodded calmly, typing a final message on her phone. Over the past 2 weeks, while Emma suffered without his care, she had meticulously built a web of evidence that would transform Victoria Pemberton from respected CEO to national example of everything that was wrong with predatory capitalism. The most brilliant part, Marcus continued admiringly, was using her own arrogant interview as a catalyst. When she said publicly that professional methods always trump amateur hunches, she basically confessed that she prioritized ego over her own daughter's well-being. Victoria's phone rang again. This time it was his PR director, panic evident in his voice. "Victoria, we need to talk now. The company's stock has plummeted 23% in the last hour. The board is calling an emergency meeting, and there are at least 6 major investors threatening to pull their funding." And who is now being interviewed live on CNN about how billionaires use the suffering of their own daughters as a shield for discriminatory practices. Victoria turned on the television and saw Joanna sitting calmly in front of the cameras, his serene demeanor contrasting with the storm he had unleashed. "Emma does not suffer from anxiety due to genetic or neurological causes," Joanna explained to the interviewer. "She developed symptoms because she lives in an environment where love is conditional on performance, where her own mother treats her like a business project that is failing." The interviewer leaned forward. "And how did you discover this in just 3 days?" "When you grow up in orphanages, you learn to recognize when a child is being emotionally neglected, even when the neglectors have billions in the bank," Joanna replied. "Emma didn't need more medication or expensive therapists. She needed someone who saw her as a person, not an extension of her mother's ego." Victoria turned off the television violently, her hands shaking with rage and despair. In less than 24 hours, her reputation, built over decades, was being systematically demolished by a woman she had completely underestimated. When her assistant announced that Emma was having another severe meltdown, the worst in weeks, Victoria realized the full extent of her defeat. She hadn't just lost her business reputation, she had lost the trust of her own daughter, who now refused to even look at her. "Mom," Emma whispered through her tears when Victoria tried to approach her, "why did you send away the only person who made me feel safe?" It was in that moment, staring into the frightened eyes of her 8-year-old daughter, that Victoria Pemberton finally understood that she had lost the only thing that truly mattered. And all because of a pride that had prevented her from recognizing that an unqualified nanny understood her daughter better than she did. As revelations piled up and masks fell one by one, a question echoed through corporate corridors and national headlines. Was it possible that someone accustomed to buying solutions to every problem could finally learn that some wounds can only be healed with humility, genuine presence, and the courage to admit that being wrong is the first step toward doing what is right? 3 months after the devastating exposé, Victoria Pemberton sat in a 2-bedroom rental apartment, a far cry from the $15 million mansion she had lost when investors pulled their funding and the board voted for her immediate removal from the company. The Department of Justice had opened a criminal investigation into systematic discrimination, tax evasion, and misuse of personal data, including her own daughter's medical information. Emma, who now lived in shared custody with her father, who had divorced Victoria years earlier, was thriving in a way that surprised all the experts. Without the constant pressure to be perfect for a control-obsessed mother, her anxiety attacks had virtually disappeared. At her new school, where no one knew about his privileged past, she was simply an 8-year-old girl who loved to draw and make friends. "Mommy," Emma said during one of Victoria's supervised visits, "Joanna was right. I didn't need medication. I just needed someone to really listen to me." Victoria swallowed hard, watching her daughter play quietly with simple plastic dolls, a stark contrast to the expensive educational toys she used to buy her. "Emma, I'm so sorry. For everything." "I know, Mom," the girl replied without resentment. Joanna said that sometimes adults forget what it's like to be a child. She said that you must have felt very lonely when you were little too. It was at that moment that Victoria realized the depth of what she had lost. Joanna had not only exposed her unethical practices, she had revealed that a billionaire mother could offer her daughter everything except the one thing that really mattered: genuine emotional presence. It was at that moment that Victoria realized the depth of what he had lost. Joanna had not only exposed her unethical practices, she had revealed that a billionaire mother could offer her daughter everything except the. Meanwhile, Joanna had become a national figure. His testimony before Congress about systemic discrimination in tech companies resulted in significant legislative changes. Universities vied for her presence at lectures on child psychology and social justice. Publishers offered her $1-million contracts to write about her experience. "You've become exactly what you always wanted to be," Marcus commented, watching his sister review job offers in her new home, modest but comfortable, located in a diverse neighborhood where Emma sometimes came to visit on weekends. "No," Joanna corrected gently, looking out the window where Emma played in the yard with other neighborhood children. "I became what the world needs me to be. Victoria taught me something important. When you have power, You can use it to protect or to destroy. She chose to destroy people who threatened his ego. I chose to protect a child who needed someone to see her. The most dramatic transformation, however, came 3 years later when Victoria, after losing all his legal resources, facing devastating government fines, and seeing former employees sue him for discrimination, finally agreed to get real therapy. Not for Emma, but for himself. Dr. Patterson, Victoria said during a particularly difficult session, I built a billion-dollar empire, commanded thousands of people, but a nanny with no college degree completely defeated me. How is that possible? The therapist, a black woman in her 50s with decades of experience treating powerful executives, smiled gently. Victoria, power without wisdom is just tyranny in disguise. Joanna didn't defeat you, she simply showed the world who you really were when no one was paying attention. But I wanted to give Emma everything. Except himself, the doctor interrupted. You confused material provision with maternal love. Joanna understood that her daughter didn't need more things. She needed to be seen, heard, and accepted exactly as she was. Victoria spent the next 2 years slowly rebuilding his relationship with Emma, this time without trying to control or mold her. She learned to sit on the floor and play, to listen without judging, to be present without an agenda. She got a job as a consultant at a small tech company, earning a fraction of what he used to make but finding satisfaction in honest work that didn't exploit anyone. During this time, Emma continued to visit Joanna regularly. The former nanny had become not only a mentor but a complimentary mother figure who offered something Victoria was still learning to give: unconditional acceptance. Joanna, Emma asked during a walk in the park, do you forgive my mother? Joanna stopped walking, considering the question carefully. Emma, forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting what happened. It means choosing not to let someone's anger poison his own heart. Your mother hurt me, but the pain she caused me has turned into strength to help other people. And more importantly, she's learning to be a better mother to you. 5 years after Victoria Pemberton's downfall, a new federal law was passed, informally known as the Joanna Act, requiring technology companies to undergo regular diversity audits and face criminal penalties for systematic discrimination. Joanna, now with his own institute dedicated to children's welfare, was invited to the signing ceremony at the White House. In the audience, sitting in a simple chair at the back of the auditorium, was Victoria. She had lost everything: money, power, influence, but she had gained something she never knew she needed: the ability to love her daughter unconditionally and to look in the mirror without feeling ashamed of who she saw reflected back at her. When Joanna took the podium to speak, his eyes met Victoria's for a brief moment. There was no triumph there, no resentment. Just the silent recognition of two women who had traveled very different paths to arrive at the same understanding: that true power does not come from controlling others, but from transforming oneself. This law, Joanna said into the microphone, does not exist to punish those who discriminate, but to protect those who need protection. It was not born out of hatred, but out of love, love for children like Emma, who deserve to grow up in a world where his value is not determined by the color of her skin, her zip code, or the size of his parents' bank account. After the ceremony, Victoria approached hesitantly. Joanna. I never had a chance to say. Victoria, Joanna interrupted gently, you don't owe him an apology. You owe yourself the continuation of this journey of growth. And you owe Emma the promise that you will never again allow power to turn into arrogance. What if he fails again? Joanna smiled, the same serenity that her had displayed years earlier when she was unfairly fired. Then he'll try again. Because that's what people who truly love do: they don't give up when the going gets tough. 2 years later, on his 13th birthday, Emma celebrated with a simple party in the backyard of the house where Victoria now lived, an ordinary house in an ordinary neighborhood, where she had learned to find happiness in things money can't buy. Joanna was there, as was Emma's father, a few school friends, and even Marcus, who had become a kind of honorary uncle. As she watched Emma blow out the candles on the homemade cake she had baked with her own hands, Victoria reflected on the journey. She had lost billions, but she had gained a daughter. She had lost power over others, but she had found power over herself. More importantly, she had learned that the best revenge against those who try to destroy you is not to destroy them back, but to become the version of yourself he never could have imagined you would become. Make a wish, sweetheart, Victoria whispered, watching Emma close her eyes in front of the candles. Emma opened her eyes and smiled. I already have. I ask that all children in the world have someone like Joanna in her life. And I ask that all mothers learn what you've learned. That night, after everyone had left, Victoria and Joanna washed the dishes together. Two women who had faced each other as adversaries and found, in the hardest lesson possible, the path to something much more valuable. The understanding that true strength does not come from humiliating others, but from lifting up those who need to be lifted up. Joanna dried her hands and got ready to leave. Victoria, can I say something? Of course. Emma is proud of the mother you've become. And if you want my opinion, so is he. It was only after Joanna had left that Victoria allowed the tears to fall, not tears of regret for what she had lost, but tears of gratitude for what she had found. An unqualified nanny had taught her the most valuable lesson of his life, that true success is not measured by what you can buy, but by the love you can give freely. Victoria and Joanna's story became a case study in business schools, not as an example of corporate failure, but as a demonstration that it is never too late to choose to be better. And Emma, now a confident teenager planning to study child psychology, often tells her friends that she had two mothers, one who gave her everything she could buy, and one who taught her everything that really matters. If this story of transformation, forgiveness, and the power of second chances touched his heart, subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove that the greatest victories don't come from defeating enemies, but from turning enmity into wisdom, trauma into strength, and prejudice into understanding.